Amount's quite small, and for most of us it'll be a relatively warm day after that chilly start. Now for Tuesday evening, the rain will turn a bit more heavy, a bit more persistent across parts of Northern Ireland and Western Scotland as the next Atlantic system pushes in, and a veil of cloud will tend to extend further south and east across the rest of the UK. So on balance, it's not going to be as cold to take us into Wednesday morning as it was for the first couple of mornings this week, although the far southeast and parts of East Anglia may just see the odd pocket of frost to take us into Wednesday morning. Otherwise, Wednesday for the most part is a cloudier day, and this area of rain will be slowly working its way from northwest to southeast of the day. It's going to be painful old progress. It's going to be slow, and for a good part of southern and eastern England probably staying dry throughout daylight hours. A bit more unsettled then midweek with these frontal systems trudging their way across the country. A bit of uncertainty as to how quickly this clears away from the east on Thursday, but by Good Friday, pressure starting to build back in, so hopefully a fine end to the week after a couple of fairly wet, more unsettled days. Dry conditions by Friday and temperatures in the low teens.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, a national scandal and a stain on our country's proud history. Superwoman Suella Braverman hits out at the political correctness over race that's allowed grooming gangs to flourish in Britain.
It's not racist to tell the truth about what has been going on here in Rochdale or in Rotherham or in Telford.
And as the Home Secretary slams Labour-run areas for enabling the gangs, has the left and its eagerness to fling around racism accusations allowed these despicable criminals to escape justice for years? That's tonight's big debate with my superstar panel. Joining me this evening, Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Belinda DeLucy. Also coming up, Slippery Starmer has tried to solve the issue of his publicly declared gender extremism, but has actually ended up stumbling into another PR catastrophe.
Keir had said 99.9% of women don't have penises.
Almost nobody, but nobody, is talking about trans issues.
Rubbish. I'll explain why for as long as Slippery Starmer can't define a biological woman, he cannot be trusted to protect women's rights. That's in my digest next. And breaking tonight, Donald Trump has landed in New York City as he gears up for his historic court hearing tomorrow. But will the nefarious attempts by his political enemies to bring him down backfire? Trump's former deputy assistant at the White House, Seb Gorka, offers his exclusive insight on that developing story stateside. Also on the way, is the British and royal family hating President Biden wrong to risk the UK and the US special relationship by turning down an invitation to the King's coronation? Niall Gardner, Ernest Owens and former aide to Ronald Reagan, Penny Grand, do battle in the clash shortly. Plus, after it was revealed that the toxic Sussexes spared just 1 hour a week to work on their Archewell Foundation, does Meghan Markle really deserve an award for her, quote, global advocacy work? Royal biographer Angela Levin explains why she thinks there's something fishy going on with the couple's undeserved gongs. She's live in the studio soon. At 60 Minutes, Australia sparks outrage with this report looking into the rise of genderless they-bees.
You can't tell what your gender is by looking at your body. Gender is something you feel on the inside.
Babies, goodness me. So are the woke mob irresponsibly indoctrinating innocent children? Lawrence Fox is going to investigate this latest madness in the Fox report. After the BBC nearly ruined Michael Vaughan's life by cancelling him over unproven racism claims, but happily made the Boris-hating hard-left agitator May Muller our Eurovision contender, is the British bashing corporation more out of touch than the public than ever before? Well, Calvin McKenzie gives an unflinching verdict on the latest scandals engulfing the BBC in Uncanceled. Plus, Nicola Sturgeon hits out at shock rumours she's in a lesbian relationship with a French diplomat.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to. I'll tell you on camera which one it is supposed to be. But whichever one it is, we've actually had a laugh about it.
I'll bring you more on that extraordinary denial later in the show. And as ever, stay tuned for a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press, and a new Greatest Britain and Union jackass will be named before the night is out as well. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Good evening, this is Britain's news channel, but big news from across the Atlantic tonight. You're looking at the latest live shots as Donald Trump's motorcade makes its way to Trump Tower in New York City ahead of his historic arraignment in court tomorrow. We're expecting that about 7:15 British time tomorrow night. But don't worry, I will keep you updated with the latest on Trump throughout the show. He is due to arrive at Trump Tower at some point in the next hour. My digest on Slippery Starmer's gender revisionism right after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. Our top story on GB News tonight. The man who murdered Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool was today sentenced to life in prison and will serve a minimum term of 42 years behind bars. Thomas Cashman shot the 9-year-old girl as he chased a convicted drug dealer into her home in August last year. Outside the court, the girl's mother, Cheryl Corbell, said her family has already started their life sentence, having to spend the rest of their lives without Olivia.
Liv was the light of our lives, a sassy, chatty girl who never ran out of energy. She was a character. She was my baby, and she had amazing qualities and knew what she wanted in life. Everyone adored her. She was the baby of our family and my little love, my shadow. Now everything we do and everywhere we go is a constant reminder that she is not there with us. All that promise for her future so cruelly taken away.
Well, in other news today, the Prime Minister has announced a new task force to crack down on grooming gangs. Rishi Sunak said the measures aim to prevent victims and whistleblowers from being ignored by authorities because of cultural sensitivities or political correctness. That's after the Home Secretary singled out British Pakistani men as a particular concern. Speaking exclusively to GB News, Suella Braverman said her comments on Pakistani men were based on reviews and reports.
It's not racist to tell the truth about what has been going on here in Rochdale or in Rotherham or in Telford. Local reviews and reports have confirmed that the grooming gangs scandal that has gone on here has been perpetrated by largely British Pakistani men. Now, it's important not to demonise a whole community, and the vast majority of British Pakistanis are law-abiding and straightforward people.
Now, the brother of the television presenter Philip Schofield has been found guilty of sexually abusing a teenage boy. Timothy Schofield was charged with 11 offences, including that with a child between October 2016 and October 2019. The 54-year-old has been remanded in custody and will be sentenced next month. Reacting to the verdict, Philip Schofield said, "As far as I'm concerned, I no longer have a brother." Teachers in England will go on strike for another 2 days next term after rejecting the latest government pay offer. They'll walk out on the 27th of April and the 2nd of May. 98% of NEU members voted against what they described as an insulting offer of a £1,000 payoff, plus an average rise of 4.5% for most staff next year. Now, as you've been hearing, Donald Trump has officially landed in New York. From Florida, he's due to appear at the Manhattan courthouse and face criminal charges tomorrow. The former US president's been indicted in relation to hush money payments, alleged hush money payments, we must say, to the adult film actress Stormy Daniels before his 2016 election campaign. Mr. Trump is going to be arraigned, fingerprinted and photographed at court in Manhattan. These pictures are of him coming off the plane a short time ago. He's now on his way to Trump Tower in New York City. His lawyer says at the court appearance tomorrow he'll enter a plea of not guilty, and he's also due to speak in Florida tomorrow as well. We'll bring you up to date on that throughout the day here on GB News. That's all from me. I'm back in an hour. Back to Dan.
So there was a hilariously naive moment overnight from the man who is convinced he is going to be the next Prime Minister of the UK. And it wasn't just this awful acting while attempting to prove to us that he doesn't actually despise his deputy, Angela Rayner.
Are we ready?
Let's go.
I think it'd be great.
Right, Ange, let's get out there and build a better Britain.
Brilliant.
No, not that. Slippery Starmer thought he had finally solved the issue of his publicly declared gender extremism that he has just seen bring down the once untouchable political career of the former Scottish First Minister scheming Nicola Sturgeon. You'll remember, of course, that Starmer and his most senior henchwomen have spent the past year being completely unable to define what a woman is and whether a woman can have a penis.
A woman can have a penis.
Nick, I'm not. I don't think we can conduct this debate with, you know.
Sorry, have I offended you in some way?
No. It's just. I just. For the vast majority of women, this is all about biology, and of course they don't have a penis. We all know that.
Is it transphobic? Look, I don't even know how to start answering these questions.
Women who are trans deserve to be recognised, and yes, therefore some of them will have penises.
When we debate it to whether or not what genitalia you've got, I think all that does is damage people and it doesn't help us go forward.
Stella Creasy, the Labour MP, said, "Do I think that women were born with penises? Yes." Do you agree with her?
No, I don't agree with her. Biological females obviously aren't.
Now, knowing that sticking to such a position will result in electoral suicide, Starmer decided on an interview with the Sunday Times to publicly reset. That's what he thought he was going to do yesterday. The lesson from Scotland, he said, is that if you can't take the public with you on a journey of reform, then you're probably not on the right journey. But when asked on a train journey from Plymouth to London by the newspaper whether a woman can have a penis, he ran directly into that PR catastrophe because he still thinks so. Starmer answered, for 99.9% of women it is completely biological, and of course they haven't got a penis. And he only proved his complete inability to answer the question in a straightforward manner when Nick Ferrari tried again on the wireless this morning.
Keir had said 99.9% of women don't have penises. That means 1 in 1,000 do?
Well, Nick, what I'd say is I'm trying to set out a common sense, respectable, tolerant position in which we can advance a key debate. Almost nobody, but nobody, is talking about trans issues.
Now, this situation would be farcical if it wasn't so serious. If you can't define a biological woman, you cannot protect women and girls. You cannot guarantee them single-sex spaces for their own protection, or the ability to compete in sport versus those who have the same biological characteristics for their own protection. This sorry tale is now spreading across the world, and it's a lesson in why woke leaders are currently eating themselves. Look at how Jacinda Ardern's successor as Prime Minister in New Zealand, Chris Hipkins, made a complete fool of himself when asked the same question today.
How do you and how does this government define a woman?
To be honest, Sean, that question's come slightly out of left field for me. Biology, sex, gender. People define themselves. People define their own genders. I wasn't expecting that question, so it's not something that I've, pre-formulated an answer on. But in terms of gender identity, I think people define their gender identity for themselves.
And you thought Jacinda Ardern was bad? Look, as far as I'm concerned, for as long as Slippery Starmer believes a woman can have a penis, it is impossible to trust Labour to protect the rights of biological women, which are under attack. And that means he must never become Prime Minister. But to respond now, my superstar panel, top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. Carol Malone, so much for a reset.
But, Starmer does this all the time. I think The Sun today called him Mr. Floppy, and that's just about right. He has turned flip-flopping and U-turning into a political strategy. He does it all the time. In the past year, he's changed his mind. He's changed his pledges on tax issues, universal credit, nationalisation. That's just three that come off the top of my head. He's changed everything. Whatever, he tailors his views to the prevailing mood of the day. I remember a year ago, he was totally against nationalisation. 2 or 3 months ago, I was on a show with him where he was talking about how great nationalisation would be for the rail industry and whatever. This man opens himself up to ridicule all the time, especially on trans issues. He's all over the place on these. He's trying to appease these radical ideologies, and in doing so, he's alienating huge swathes of Labour voters who think he's nuts. You go to the Red Wall constituencies and you talk to them about Keir Starmer not knowing what a woman is. They think he's mad. They think it's insane.
And Belinda de Lucy, they are talking about this, aren't they?
Shut up now.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Right in the middle of it. Never mind, you crack on there.
I mean, people are talking about this because people don't like being lied to. They don't like being conned. And what Keir is doing, I'm sorry, but it is a lie. Trans women may have penises because they're male. Women don't. Adult human females do not have penises. And if a politician can lie about something as fundamental as what a woman is, how on earth are we to believe anything they say anywhere? You look at the Finnish Prime Minister. Just now, she's been chucked out of office. She's lost the election. 6 weeks ago, she brought in self-ID, and it's being suggested this is one of the reasons. So that's the second European head that has lost her crown because of this fantasy, this lying to the public about what a woman and man is. Do you know what would be kind to say? Those who suffer from gender dysphoria and diagnosed as such have compassion and therapy. Stop this lie about men being women.
Benjamin Butterworth, he thought he was solving the issue, but he hasn't, because you might think it's OK to say that a woman can have a penis, but the vast majority of Brits don't think that's OK.
Well, like most things, you're completely wrong and completely out of touch. You know, Keir Starmer said in that clip that you just played...
You think British people think that a woman can have a penis?
I think British people have got better ruddy things to think about than these kind of spurious culture war arguments.
That's 51%.
And the truth is that Keir Starmer, when he said people just aren't talking about this, and you all scoffed...
It's nonsense.
Well, I tell you what, we've got facts to back it up. More in Common, which is an impartial think tank and polling group, did a poll of 5,000 people in June last year, the biggest that's ever been done on this question. What percentage said this is an issue that's going to decide their vote? 2%. YouGov did a poll of 2,000 people saying, do you care about the transgender question? 66% said they had little or no interest at all.
Carol, doesn't
not bothering people when they can't pay their bills.
That completely manipulates what's actually going on here, because people don't care about trans people. We want trans people to be able to live a happy and healthy life.
Exactly.
But what we care about is science and biology and the protection of women. So actually, this isn't about the trans issue. It's about biological women. It's about telling the truth.
But I think what this shows about Starmer is he doesn't believe in anything, trans issues or otherwise. What he does is he just tailors his views to whatever...
He wants to become Prime Minister.
He wants to become... So he will... You remember...
At any cost?
When Brexit happened, remember? He said we must respect the views of the people. Within months, he was campaigning for a second referendum. He's done it with Corbyn, supported Corbyn to the hilt. Now Corbyn's worse than Muck, and he's not fit to be an MP, let alone Prime Minister.
Why are you shaking your head there, Benjamin?
I mean, the gall, the gall of someone to sit here and say that Keir Starmer's... well, both you and Dan, to say Keir Starmer is a man who just wants to be Prime Minister when you desperately defend Boris Johnson, a man who believes in nothing but his own ego.
We said he will say any old tosh.
Hashtag diversion tactics. Hashtag diversion tactics. Sadly, Boris isn't Prime Minister right now.
There's no hypocrisy. We said he will say anything to become Prime Minister. Yeah. He is so desperate. That's not what you just said.
Keir Starmer has the backbone to listen to the British public.
And
that's why the average poll of polls in the last 7 days still puts Labour 21% ahead.
If he really was listening to the British public, he would have the balls to say, no, a biological woman cannot have a penis. Trans women may claim that they can be a woman and have a penis, but actually that's not backed up by reality.
I don't think we need genital police running the country. People just want to be able to pay their bills.
I just want to quickly go to New York now, because we've got a live shot of Trump Tower, and this is where the former president is now back in residence ahead of his arrest due for 7:15 p.m. tomorrow night. At this point, it's unclear if we are going to be hearing from Trump tonight, but we will bring you any comments that he does make over the course of the show. Let me tell you, too, a very shocking major political death, which we will be telling you about just after the break as well. So do stay tuned. It's a big night of breaking news. But also on the way, as current affairs programme 60 Minutes Australia sparks outrage with a report looking into the rise of genderless they-be children, are the woke mob indoctrinating innocent kids? Lawrence Fox investigates this later gender madness in the Fox report. But next in The Clash, is Britain-hating President Biden wrong to risk the UK and US's special relationship by reportedly snubbing an invite to the King's coronation? Niall Gardner, Ernest Owens and former aide to Ronald Reagan, Penny Grand, do battle in The Clash shortly. Let us know what you think, though. Email me, dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me using the handle @GBNews. Our poll running there, the results and The Clash, plus this breaking news straight after the break.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel. Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Breaking tonight, the former Conservative Party politician and journalist, ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer Nigel Lawson has died at the age of 91. Lawson was an MP for almost 2 decades, serving in the cabinet of Margaret Thatcher throughout the 1980s. He was appointed Chancellor in June 1983, staying in the role until his resignation in October 1989. Despite standing down as an MP 3 years later, he would then sit in the House of Lords, continuing to stay in active politics as a passionate supporter of leaving the EU. Mr Lawson had 6 children, including the famous food writer Nigella Lawson and also the top Daily Mail columnist Dominic. So joining me to pay tribute now to Nigel's life and career, the former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner. And Niall, look, he obviously had an incredible life, but still very sad news tonight.
Yes, it is, Dan. And Nigel Lawson, I think, was a man of real principle, a true Thatcherite, and also a very strong Brexiteer as well. I had the opportunity to meet him on a number of occasions when I worked for Lady Thatcher, and he was somebody who I think was the embodiment in every respect of what Thatcherism was all about. And Lady Thatcher had tremendous respect, actually, for Nigel Lawson. he leaves behind, I think, a legacy of a far stronger British economy as a result of the free market policies that were implemented under Lady Thatcher. And Nigel Lawson really played a very critically important role in terms of advancing those policies, including, of course, a series of tax cuts. And so we owe a great debt, I think, to Nigel Lawson and his life of service to Great Britain and for all of the work that he did alongside Margaret Thatcher.
Very well put. So just repeating that news, that Nigel Lawson, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, has died aged 91. Niall Gardner, you hang on there, though, because it's time now for The Clash. And Joe Biden has reportedly rejected an invite to King Charles's coronation in a remarkable snub that exposes the US president's disdain for Britain. Sources close to the discussions justified the decision to the Daily Telegraph by citing his packed schedule and age. It's expected that the First Lady Jill Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris will be sent in his place. Now, I have to say, over the weekend, I experienced the most over-the-top abuse from increasingly Anglophobe Americans, particularly on the left, after pointing out on Twitter that Biden planning to snub the coronation of King Charles tells you everything you need to know about how one of the worst presidents in modern history feels about the United Kingdom. Shame on him. And of course, Biden, I also pointed out, very closely aligned with Harry and Meghan. But Sleepy Joe has a long history of loathing our country. One of his first moves as president was to remove Winston Churchill's bust from the Oval Office, and he's on the record for using his Irish roots to bash Britain. Watch.
A quick word for the BBC. The BBC, I'm Irish.
So what do you think? Is President Biden wrong to turn down an invitation to the King's coronation? Dan at gbnews.uk on the email, or you can vote in our poll at GBNews on Twitter. But I'm going to welcome back now Niall Gardner, alongside the former advisor to Ronald Reagan, Peggy Grande, and the author of The Case for Cancel Culture, Ernest Owens. So, Peggy, look, I know that no previous US president has attended a coronation. That's what people have been throwing at me for the past 48 hours. I also put it to you that we haven't had a coronation since 1953. We've only had two in the last century. And globalisation has sort of changed a little thing called air travel, right? It's not a big deal for the president to get on a plane to come to the coronation. So this is a real snub, isn't it?
Absolutely. I don't see how you see it as any other way. And thank you for having me on tonight, Dan. And to your point, in 1953, when the Queen was coronated, Eisenhower was president. He was newly elected as president. She obviously was very young. I don't think they had ever met. They didn't have a long-standing relationship. To your point, air travel was a little more difficult. And so here you've got Joe Biden and King Charles. They have known each other for decades. They've both stood on the world stage for a very long time. And I don't see how you interpret this any other way than it's just what he said, not a priority to him. He's prioritizing his trip to Northern Ireland and really is going back to those Obama-Biden era days where he said Britain is going to be at the back of the queue if they vote for Brexit. And we see that in the politics too, with the trade deals that have really been very lukewarm. So I think it's a snub, and perhaps he's reacting to feeling snubbed himself when he was seated in the 14th row of the Queen's funeral. But I think he should be there.
Ernest Owens, isn't this just another extension of the damage that Harry and Meghan are causing to the royal family and to the UK? Because Biden adores Harry and Meghan, but he hates the royal family.
I think that that's a far reach. I really think that, you know, we have to understand that, you know, the president of the free world, he is a world leader. And I think that it will take a lot of attention off of the actual situation at hand. We have to be mindful about how we come across in this conversation. I don't think Biden means the ill will. I think blaming Meghan and Harry is just intellectually dishonest. And I really just think that, look, the president does not have to come to every event. And I don't think that it's a sign of disrespect. I think that he's actually, you know, really being mindful about where he travels at his age at this point. And I don't think there's much.
Then maybe he shouldn't run for re-election again, I would argue. But look, Niall Gardner, if you research Biden and you look into his views, they're very deep-rooted, his hatred. I don't use that word lightly, hatred. So you go back to his own autobiography back in 2008, Promises to Keep, and he admitted his mother's Irish-American relatives hang on to Irish grudges. And he quotes his Aunt Gertie once telling him, "Your father's not a bad man, he's just English." And then in 1982, before he met the late Queen for the first time, his mother, Jean Biden, gave him one piece of advice, and he said, she said to him, "Don't you dare bow down to the Queen." So at the end of the day, I actually think there's a lot of evidence to suggest this isn't just about his age, Niall. It's about something much deeper than that. Biden loves the Irish. He hates the British.
Well, Dan, thanks very much for having me on the show today. And, you know, without a doubt, of course, this is insulting to people. And Joe Biden has knifed Britain in the back on multiple occasions. And as you mentioned earlier, he started off his presidency, as Barack Obama did previously, by throwing a bust of Winston Churchill out of the Oval Office. So that's the start of his presidency. And he's since knifed Britain in the back over a US-UK trade deal. He has constantly lectured the British government over the Northern Ireland issue. He is also a Euro-federalist. He's a big supporter of the European Union. He's anti-Brexit. And I would describe as well President Biden as a very rude individual. He's also one of the laziest US presidents, I think, in modern memory as well. So making this trip over to the UK, he couldn't be bothered to do it. And I have to say, this is yet another disappointment coming from the Biden White House. I mean, a really, at the end of the day, insulting move by the US.
Well, he's one of the worst presidents. He is one of the worst presidents in American history. And the thing is, Peggy, so many Brits seem to have an issue with Donald Trump. But let me tell you, there is no way that Donald Trump would not have attended the coronation. So whatever you think about his politics, he was such a firm believer in the special relationship.
Absolutely, he was. And he fostered that. He encouraged that. And, you know, back to my old boss, Ronald Reagan, we saw his relationship with Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. It was rumored that maybe the Queen said that he was her favorite president. But you looked at that special relationship that really meant something. They liked each other personally and weren't just steeped in protocol or the politics. And so it's really important because especially now when you look at the world, this new world order that is emerging where it's really scary and dangerous. We see an alliance between China and Iran and Russia and North Korea. It is important for every opportunity that the Western nations have to stand shoulder to shoulder, to show an alliance, to show a unified front to the rest of the world. And I think for Joe Biden, this is a huge missed opportunity to show that strength, to show that special relationship is still intact, and to show that we are a united front and that we're watching this evil axis form across the world.
Ernest, you look shocked there. What are you shocked about?
Well, for starters, Trump is currently being indicted. And I think that we should not consider the fact that he's a attention hog. So he's the type of person that if he was there, he would make it about himself because he's, you know, a narcissist. So I don't necessarily know if that's the perfect comparison to make. And I don't think that that is, you know, he is someone who is, in this country, in America, someone that we consider a good president.
All right, Ernest. I don't believe in cancelling people, but I'm going to cancel you right now because we can't hear you properly. That's the only reason why. Because usually I do not believe in cancel culture. But look, thank you all. That was the former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner, former advisor to Ronald Reagan, Peggy Grande, and, of course, the author of The Case for Cancel Culture, Ernest Owens. But who do you agree with? Is Biden wrong to turn down an invite to the coronation? Kessel says, yes, this is a massive insult to the King and to the UK. Just goes to show this is a president with no interest in maintaining the special relationship and who has a total disregard for our King and country. From Mayflower, no president has been to a coronation, plus he doesn't like Britain. So if he doesn't want to attend, fine, he won't be missed. Well, that's for sure. And from Hero, it's an invitation, therefore the right to accept or decline is perfectly acceptable. And your verdict is now in. 68% of you say that Biden is wrong to turn down this invite. 32% of you say he was right to snub the new monarch. Now, coming up, after it was revealed that the Sussexes spared just 1 hour a week to work on their Archewell Foundation, does Meghan Markle really deserve an award for her global advocacy work? Royal biographer Angela Levin weighs in on that. Breaking news soon. But first, as the Australian current affairs show 60 Minutes sparked fury with a report into increasing numbers of so-called genderless they-be children, are the woke mob now indoctrinating innocent kids? Lawrence Fox has been investigating this latest madness, and he's live next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for the Fox Report with Lawrence Fox, and a report in Australia has sparked outrage after it exposed the radical parenting movement of raising they-bees. Yep, that's right, they-bees. Look at this.
Meet Bertie. Bertie likes the colour purple, fire engines and Elsa from Frozen.
In our family home, we make sure that we're not reinforcing gender pronouns or gender terms. We just let Bertie be who Bertie is at the moment.
You can't tell what your gender is by looking at your body. Gender is something you feel on the inside.
In this complicated new world, the children are in charge of their own gender reveal.
So it was right around Zoomer's 4th birthday that he said, I love he, him pronouns. And, I was like, that's fantastic.
So, Lawrence, we've been warning about gender extremists indoctrinating young children, but we're now actually seeing it happen to newborns. Is this a new low?
It's so strange, isn't it? Because, the thing about being a child is that you support and love a child and you encourage the child in a direction. But this is a parent imposing an ideology on a child. And it's really sad to watch. Like, on his 4th birthday, he came and said to me that he liked to use the pronouns he, him. I'm like, really, Mum? Did he? Is that true? No, he didn't. You imposed your weird ideology on him because you're a crazy nutcase gender cultist. And you need to be taken... Look, I was always told, and I was raised on this mantra, which is that we should be tolerant of everything except intolerance. And this is intolerance. You're not tolerating your child's ability to grow and develop their own culture and their own understanding. Aside from the fact it's deeply homophobic and it wipes, it transes away the gay, it's like, let's not do this. Let's let the kids be kids. LKBK.
Absolutely. I mean, I look at poor little Bertie there, I think Bertie is going to be screwed up because of parents like that, not because of the gender that Bertie chooses. And also, this is actually so narrow-minded when you really dig into it, because, yes, I completely agree with you, and we spoke about it last week about the fact that it's homophobic. But also, Lawrence, can we not assume that just because a young boy likes little Elsa from Frozen, that they might be questioning their gender? You're allowed to like things that are usually connected to another gender. This is ridiculous.
I like Let It Go. It's a great song. It doesn't mean that I'm a princess, does it? Do you know what I mean? It's a society in decline, Dan. I mean, I can't get to the bottom of this other than to say, look, society is due a reset, and this is a very sad state that we're all talking about gender and all this sort of stuff.
But this is a really big coming trend now, though, this babies thing, because, Harry and Meghan have backed that very odd organisation that says that parents are really deeply responsible if they host gender reveal parties. So, unfortunately, I think the rise of the they-bees is coming. But look, Lawrence, want to move on because breaking tonight, Donald Trump has now arrived in New York at Trump Tower, where he will spend the night in his apartment. Of course, tomorrow, the former president will respond to charges. There he is arriving tonight, but respond to charges of covering up a hush money payment to the porn star Stormy Daniels at Manhattan Criminal Court at 2:15. But, Lawrence, surprise, surprise, the indictment appears to have given Trump a major political boost. Just as I predicted on the show, as this broke on Thursday night, latest polling from Yahoo News and YouGov shows that in a one-on-one contest, he now leads his Republican rival Ron DeSantis by a massive 26 percentage points less than 2 weeks ago. The lead was 8%. So, Lawrence, it appears like attempts to destroy the Donald are well and truly backfiring.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that this is the sort of baby you'd expect from Colombia or Cuba or somewhere like that, a banana republic where you imprison your political rivals. I pray every day for Donald Trump to return to the White House, because these moral supremacists in the Bidens, Joe Biden is on record saying that he's going to take down the prosecutor in Ukraine. He's on record as a corrupt criminal family. He's a crime baron, Joe Biden. And Trump, for whatever you like or don't like about him, he's a real human being. And what's going to happen here is this electioneering, this election rigging that the Democrats are trying to do is going to backfire so badly on them. And I hope that they're out of power for a generation. I really do, because they're the most dangerous political organisation there is on earth, and of course, at the moment.
You researched Hunter Biden in particular very closely, didn't you? Because you played him in a film, and Donald Trump loved your performance. So what do you think could be the consequence here, Lawrence? Because actually, even if Trump is found guilty, and there are a huge number of steps to get to before we're at that point, it doesn't necessarily preclude him from continuing his bid for the White House.
Yeah, but what's he guilty of, Dan? It's a misdemeanor. Like, at the highest threshold of the law, it's a misdemeanor, and the statute of limitations is gone. for this misdemeanor. This man, okay, look, we don't have to, JFK was a bit of a dodgy president. He had some sexual proclivities that people don't go into, but Donald Trump essentially is the contestant against Joe Biden and against the radical left in America, who believe that as moral supremacists that they are, that they belong in power. Donald Trump is as he said himself, it's not me they're after, it's you, I'm just in the way. This man is the great hope for Western civilization by a mile, a country mile. These radical leftists who are taking over, we've seen it all the way through society at the moment, certainly with wokery and with women's stuff. If we don't have Trump, we lose America. It will secede. The Republican states will secede from the Democratic states, and you'll have a broken republic, and that's not a good thing for society.
Indeed, so much at stake tomorrow. Lawrence Fox, thank you so much. That's the Fox Report for another week. We will speak next week. But coming up, as Suella Braverman slams political correctness and Labour counsels for enabling grooming gangs, has the left, in its determination to fling around accusations of racism, allowed these despicable criminals to escape justice for too long? My superstar panel return to debate that shortly. But next, after it was discovered that the Sussexes gave just 1 hour a week to work on their Archewell Foundation, should Meghan Markle really win an award for her global advocacy work? Harry's biographer Angela Levin, she's live in the studio on this straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Prince Harry's official biographer, our top royal expert, Angela Levin, joins me now live in the studio. And Meghan Markle's relentless pursuit of the media spotlight has seen her scoop a variety of awards in recent times, including somehow being named top entertainment podcast host by the Gracie Awards just last week for that atrociously woke and boring Archetypes moan fest. But her latest gong reveal today must be the most galling, I think, of the lot, actually. The New York-based Miss Foundation for Women has announced that they will honour the pompous princess with a Woman of Vision Award, which is the largest recognition granted by America's oldest women's foundation. It will be at a star-studded ceremony in May with a press release praising Meghan's global advocacy to empower and advocate on behalf of women and girls. But I'm sorry, this just doesn't add up to me, because a recent tax filing has exposed that the shameless Sussexes spent just 1 hour a week working for their charitable Archewell Foundation. So, Angela, how can Meghan possibly be worthy of a Global Advocacy Award based on 1 hour of charitable work a week?
Yes, I think it's all quite cunning, actually. I think that she chats up. Woman was Gloria Steinem.
Yes, who's going to be presenting the award, right?
Yes, who decided that this award was just for Meghan. And she'd got very friendly with her. And then a load of people invest lots of money. One invested 10 million into the Archewell Foundation, another 2 million. And so I think it's just very good getting other people to do the work and providing the money. And then you just sit back and say, you know, aren't I wonderful? I think it's absolutely extraordinary and doesn't make any sense. But she did that. She did the one you said about the podcast. She also did the one of the Kennedy Foundation about actually fighting against the institutional racism of the royal family. And then suddenly saying, you know, months and months later, that actually, no, there's not really any racism, but they haven't sent back the award. It's as if she's sort of gathering them and that helps her ego. But it's a very peculiar way of behaving, I think. And I don't know how you don't feel guilty about taking that on.
Because as far as I can tell, Angela, there's only been one project that Harry and Meghan have worked on consistently over the past year, and it's making this.
Yeah.
Getting their bank balance extended by the day. And the thing about the Archewell filings, I thought it was absolutely fascinating, actually, because they can't lie, you know, because it's for the IRS. Yeah. And only 1 hour a week of work. You know, in the Netflix series, they would have had you think that they were running the office together. Remember, they showed their desks side by side. Oh, yeah, we're always in here toiling away for the good of the world. No, you're not. That's a big fat lie.
Yeah, this is what they say. Our sole purpose is to do good. The other thing is that they believe in compassion, and that's their aim, that everyone in the world is compassionate to everyone else. What example are they in reality? You know, she doesn't speak to anyone in her family except her mother, and she's actually encouraged Harry to leave his own family, and she's got not a good word to say to them. So it's absolutely astonishing that they have the audacity to take this high-rise behaviour and pretend that actually they deserve all these things. It's laughable, actually. It's like giving a child at a party a present so that he doesn't feel left out. She doesn't deserve any of those things, actually.
Well, isn't it actually worse than that? Aren't we actually starting to reward bad behaviour? And actually, shame on the Miss Foundation for Women, because your awards are going to be a joke now, because we know you're only doing this for publicity. There's actually no way that you can justify giving Meghan an award for advocacy over the past year. There's no way you can justify that. So we're actually starting to now reward famous people for acting badly, for treating your family terribly, for trying to undermine your country, for trashing your grandmother's, your late grandmother's life work. That's what they win an award for?
Yes. I think the fact is that they disregard it. I don't think you win for it. I think they disregard all those sort of more negative things and just take a look at a very attractive woman and what she says and believe her. They don't question it. I think this is what a lot of... Well, I think this is...
all there.
Because it's too unpleasant to see all that. So they pretend it doesn't exist. So Meghan has a group of people who think she's absolutely beyond the pale. She's absolutely wonderful. Whereas people actually looking at what she's done and analysing it, with doesn't take much, realise that she's actually quite a damaged woman and quite nasty. But I think people just disregard it all because she pretends it doesn't happen. She doesn't stop and think, well, I've done enough now. I've got to think about it and then move on and try not to do X, Y, Z, as most of us do as we look at ourselves. She doesn't. She pretends it doesn't exist. If she has been found out for a lie, it doesn't exist. It doesn't stop her. She doesn't take any notice of it. I think it's absolutely peculiar.
Well, she just cuts people out, doesn't she? That's
yes, but for herself, she does something like pretend she got married 3 days before she did, which was terrible for the Archbishop of Canterbury because he faced a criminal charge if he had married them 3 days before the proper wedding. She just ignores it. There's never apologies. She's never wrong. She's, it's an extraordinary way to think about yourself.
There as well, because
Huge.
you look at Jessica Mulroney, her best friend. The moment that Jessica annoyed the woke mob, she was cut.
Yes.
She was cut immediately. Meghan didn't stand by her. Meghan didn't show her compassion. Meghan didn't say, no, this is my best friend. Yes, she's done something silly, but I'm prepared to take the reputational hit because she's my best friend. No, she's gone. She's out. She's banished forever.
Yes, I think perhaps Harry that does what she says because he fears that he might be next. It's very frightening, I think, to live with somebody like that because they have the power and they have the single dimension of going ahead. And I think, if she wants to be a politician in America, I mean, she's got to learn that she can't have such a thin skin because she does feel she can do that, but she won't be able to at all. It's just nonsense.
And if she wants to advocate on behalf of women and girls, I think...
Oh, it's the way she's advertising for women and girls. I mean, she married a very rich man who's very famous. So that's what her fame is resting on, not the fact that she's a woman or a girl doing fantastically well.
And why don't you go and look after your lovely wheelchair-bound sister in Florida, if you really gave a damn about advocating for women and girls. But we don't. Yes. She advocates for one person, doesn't she? Herself, as always. But
yes,
look,
yes, it
Angela
is.
Niven, so brilliant to have you on the studio. On this breaking news, believe it or not, Meghan Markle is going to be named the Women of Vision for 2023. And the Miss Foundation for Women has now proven that they run a sham awards ceremony. Angela, thank you so much.
Thank you.
But coming up, Donald Trump has now landed in New York City as he gets ready for his historic court hearing tomorrow. But will the attempts to bring down the former president backfire on his political enemies? Trump's former deputy assistant, Seb Gorka, offers his exclusive insight on that big developing story stateside shortly. But next, as Superwoman Suella Braverman criticises Labour councils and their political correctness for allowing grooming gangs to thrive, has the left and its eagerness to cry racism let these despicably horrible criminals escape justice for years. My superstar panel debate that next. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as Superwoman Suella speaks out on the political correctness around race that has allowed grooming gangs in the UK to flourish.
It's not racist to tell the truth about what has been going on here in Rochdale or in Rotherham or in Telford.
So has the left's eagerness to flee around accusations of racism enabled evil criminals to escape justice? That's the big debate with my superstar panel next. And tonight, I'm joined by Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Belinda DeLucy. The Donald has touched down in New York ahead of his dramatic showdown in the courts tomorrow. But as Trump pulls away from his Republican rival Ron DeSantis in the polls, has the indictment somehow strengthened his bid for a sensational second term? Trump's former deputy assistant at the White House, Seb Gorka, offers his exclusive insight on this developing story stateside soon. Also coming up this hour, as English cricketing legend Michael Vaughan is cleared of using racist language but remains abandoned by the BBC, this lefty upstart May Muller has been handpicked by bosses as the UK's Eurovision entrant, even after saying Boris Johnson didn't deserve an intensive care bed. So, post-Lineker-gate, has the British Bashing Corporation nailed their woke colours to the mast once again? Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie uncancelled on that later this hour. Plus, with Joe Biden set to snub an invitation to the King's coronation, is the Sussex-supporting president undermining the special relationship between America and the UK? And in an eye-opening interview, her first major personal chat since stepping down as First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon has denied rumours that she's a secret lesbian.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to. I'll tell you off camera which one it is supposed to be. But whichever one it is, we've actually had a laugh about it.
Much more on both those stories in the media buzz shortly. And as Keir Starmer still says a woman can have a penis, has anyone today dropped a bigger clanger than that? Well, we'll find out when I crown tonight's greatest Britain and Union Jackass. A first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages in mere moments too, right after Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. Our top story on GB News tonight. The man who murdered Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool was sentenced today to life in prison, and he'll serve a minimum term of 42 years. Thomas Cashman shot the 9-year-old as he chased a convicted drug dealer into her home in August last year. Outside the court, the schoolgirl's mother, Cheryl Corbell, said her family has already started their life sentence, having to spend the rest of their lives without Olivia.
Liv was the light of our lives, a sassy, chatty girl who never ran out of energy. She was a character. She was my baby, and she had amazing qualities and knew what she wanted in life. Everyone adored her. She was the baby of our family and my little love, my shadow. Now everything we do and everywhere we go is a constant reminder that she is not there with us. All that promise for her future so cruelly taken away.
Well, in other news today, the Prime Minister has announced a new task force to crack down on grooming gangs. Rishi Sunak said the measures aim to prevent victims and whistleblowers from being ignored by the authorities because of cultural insensitivities and political correctness. That's after the Home Secretary singled out British Pakistani men as a particular concern. Suella Braverman says her comments on Pakistani men were based on reviews and reports.
It's not racist to tell the truth about what has been going on here in Rochdale or in Rotherham or in Telford. Local reviews and reports have confirmed that the grooming gangs scandal that has gone on here has been perpetrated by largely British Pakistani men. Now, it's important not to demonise a whole community, and the vast majority of British Pakistanis are law-abiding and straightforward people.
Within the last hour, tributes have been paid to the former Conservative MP and Chancellor Nigel Lawson after his death at the age of 91. The leading Brexiteer served in Margaret Thatcher's government and sat in the House of Lords until his retirement in December. He's survived by his 7 children, including the TV cook and author Nigella Lawson. Rishi Sunak has called him a transformational Chancellor and an inspiration. Well, as you've been hearing, Donald Trump has arrived at Trump Tower in New York City, where he's due to appear in court tomorrow and face criminal charges. The former US president has been indicted in relation to alleged hush money payments to the adult film star Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. Mr. Trump is due to be arraigned, fingerprinted and photographed at the court in Manhattan, his lawyer saying he'll enter a plea of not guilty. Then we believe he's also due to speak in Florida tomorrow. Full details of that right here on GB News. That is the news for now. I'm back in an hour. Now back to Dan.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. So let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages hot off the press. How could he keep shooting after hearing her terrified screams? The Independent leads with the chilling words of the brave mother of the 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel as the child's gutless killer Thomas Cashman is jailed for a minimum of 42 years. And actually, look, there it is, gutless. The headline in the Metro, if we head to that, after Cashman refused to face Olivia's family in court today for the sentencing. The Eye reports that UK summer holidays are to be hit by further passport delays after new strikes. Holidaymakers could now face a wait of 3 months after 1,800 workers began a 5-week walkout today. Honestly, utterly disgraceful. And the government has to face them down because this is just absolutely revolting behaviour. My superstar panel back with me now, though. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the Eye newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. Now, the government has today been announcing a new set of measures to tackle grooming gangs, including tougher sentences and a new police task force of specialist officers. Downing Street also said experts will track suspects down using cutting-edge intelligence, including the collection of ethnicity data. And speaking today, both Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak condemned the political correctness that has historically allowed grooming gangs in the UK to flourish.
It's not racist to tell the truth about what has been going on here in Rochdale or in Rotherham or in Telford. Local reviews and reports have confirmed that the grooming gangs scandal that has gone on here has been perpetrated by largely British Pakistani men.
And what's clear is that when victims and other whistleblowers came forward, their claims were often ignored by social workers, local politicians, or even the police. And the reason that they were ignored were due to cultural sensitivity and political correctness. Now, that's not right.
Yesterday, the Home Secretary shared her contention as to which political party is responsible.
But some of these councillors, senior politicians in Labour-run areas over a period of years absolutely failed to take action because of cultural sensitivities, not wanting to come across as racist, not wanting to call out people along ethnic lines.
Cara Malone, I have to say bravo to Braverman and Sunak today. You know, here on GB News, since our launch, we have been banging the drum about the danger of these grooming gangs, the fact that it's still going on. But Carol, so many people, including virtually everyone in Labour, too scared to say a word because they're worried that they're going to be accused of being
It's interesting,
racist.
today, Yvette Cooper actually said today that it was disgusting because the Tories were in power. No, the worst abuse happened on Labour on councils. I mean, it's shocking. You know, Suella there, what you didn't see was that she had said, I wasn't going to make this political, but it was brought up in the interview, and she said, but if you want to know, it was Labour on councils where the worst thing happened. But,
Which is true. You only have to look at the data.
But, I mean, the scale and scope of this abuse should not have happened in a supposedly civilised country. I was around at the time. I was reporting on this. And it's interesting, she says, it's not racist to say who was doing it. We in the media, and you probably remember this as well, we were not allowed to say Pakistani Muslim men were doing this. We were allowed to say men of colour were doing it, but we weren't allowed to say who. And it wasn't until they were taken to trial where we could put pictures and identify them that we were allowed to say. So even after these girls had been abused and raped and brutalised, we weren't allowed to say who has done it. You know, and I know at the time that the police, social workers, people, you know, local politicians, they didn't want to rock the multicultural
No, indeed.
thing, and boat, and they hid stuff, they suppressed
Exactly.
stuff.
So this has been a scandal for over a decade now. But Benjamin Butterworth, I'm seeing a lot of your folk, including Keir Starmer, be very intellectually dishonest today because you're coming back with this argument saying, oh, but the majority of people doing this are still white men.
That's not
But
true.
here's the issue. We are a predominantly white country, so you have to look at where things stand proportionally. And when it comes to grooming gangs, there is a disproportionate number of British Pakistani men who are guilty. And isn't it amazing that we're finally allowed, well, I mean, on GB News, we've been saying this obviously since launch, but that you're hearing politicians finally allowed to speak this truth?
I mean, you know, Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, as Carol just referenced, said much the same thing when she was doing the rounds on the airwaves this morning about the fact that you shouldn't be afraid to call out the nature in which this happened. And the truth is that it's, you know, there are more white people who are prosecuted for this than not, but clearly there was a problem.
Yes, we're a predominantly white country.
Clearly there was a problem where you had groups of people, often from Southeast Asia in the examples you're referring to, who got unreasonable levels of power within that community and were able to exploit that and manipulate it. But I think it'd be wrong to think that it's unique to them because, you know, you see plenty of other examples of this happening where, you know, take even in show business, where you get groups of people that execute power that is unreasonable because people don't want to call it out. And I think that's what the Home Secretary should prepare them for.
82% of grooming gangs are South Asian men. I mean, that is a fact.
And they're only 1% of the British population.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
and that's where there's been a lot of intellectual dishonesty, Belinda.
Yeah, and then what I like about what Suella said is, and we need to address this, that the Lib left's obsession with multiculturalism at all costs, to women and girls. We need to have, you know, shut up for the sake of diversity. What the Labour MP Naz Shah retweeted sums up exactly how they see multiculturalism. All cultures are not the same. They're not equal. There are some cultures that are abhorrent to women and girls. And Pakistan rates very, very low on its cultural treatment of women. So what on earth were people going to expect? Of course there were going to be some of them. Those guys. Not all, because
Benjamin, you come in and then Belinda
many
can respond.
Pakistani men have come over and lived very integrated lives, share our values, but many have not. And we need to talk about
Let Benjamin come in and then you can respond.
Naz Shah on this, that Labour MP is completely mistaken. She was put in a forced marriage, raped and taken out of this country.
Got nothing to do
and
with
became a landmark of she's a very high profile critic of the way in which the Muslim community have behaved in that way because she went through an ordeal that made her and her mother that made the front pages throughout the 90s. So she's a terrible example to give.
What about the forced resignation of Sarah Champion, the Labour MP that had to resign because she dared associate the grooming bang?
Well, I think she's a shadow minister now under Keir Starmer. I'm not disagreeing with the idea there's a problem.
What was shocking back then is the amount of people who ignored this. You know, even vulnerable girls who were put into council care, they were got at by these gangs because the gangs would come by in cars. They would have drugs and alcohol. Remember, these girls had nothing, and they would be tempted into cars by these guys. social workers knew this was happening, care workers knew this was happening, local politicians knew what was happening, and they all just ignored it for the sake of multiculturalism.
Turned a blind eye for a long time, because this has been hiding in plain sight.
And you know what Suella said today, which I think is also, she said, you know, there is no hiding place for these people anymore. There never was. They never needed a hiding place. It happened in plain sight, and it's still happening right now.
Every member, every single person in our authorities and our politicians that turned a blind eye to this should be sacked. I don't know why any are still in their job.
I think, Belinda, there will be policemen in top jobs in this country who still care about being branded racist, who still care about political correctness more than they care about saving lives.
Yeah, well, they want to sacrifice girls on the altar of multiculturalism and political correctness. It sums up the Lib left.
Very good point to end on. Now, the self-proclaimed danger tourist Miles Routledge, who counts the Ukrainian front line in South Sudan on a list of his holiday destinations, has been captured by the Taliban. Now, the 23-year-old daredevil is one of 3 British nationals who were arrested in Afghanistan after a business deal reportedly went wrong. But shockingly, and you might remember this, it isn't the first time Miles has found himself at the mercy of the former terror group. Back in 2021, he travelled to Afghanistan during the fall of Kabul, documenting his adventure using surreal posts like these on his social media, including pictures of him buddying up with Taliban fighters he jokingly called the Taliban Bros. He was eventually rescued by British troops as part of the massive airlift operation, and I had the opportunity to sit down with Miles shortly after that ordeal to discuss his frightening experience. But sadly, and I genuinely mean this because I saw what was coming when I spoke to Miles, my pleas for him to ditch the crazy danger tourism fell on deaf ears. What's the definition of madness? Doing something completely wrong multiple times, and you have not learnt your lesson from this very lucky escape from Afghanistan. You want to do it again, Miles. I mean, I'm almost imploring you. Go to university, take a little gap year trip, do some backpacking. You know, just leave South Sudan, mate. Thankfully for Miles, the Home Secretary Suella Braverman has committed to getting the 3 men home safely and confirmed the government is in talks with the Taliban.
If they're a British citizen abroad, then the UK government is going to do whatever it takes to ensure that they're safe. The government is in negotiations and working hard to ensure people's safety is upheld.
I obviously support the government in bringing these men home. It is unfortunate that so much time and so much money is having to be spent on securing Miles' rescue again. I hope this is all resolved quickly and that Miles takes my advice and ditches these highly irresponsible trips once and for all. But of course, we do want him to get home safe first. Karen Malone, Benjamin Butworth, Belinda DeLucy, do stand by, because coming up, with President Biden due to snub an invitation to next month's coronation, is Sleepy Joe killing off the special relationship between the UK and the US, partly because of his close friendship with Harry and Meghan? Tonight's Superstar panel have their say very soon. But next, all eyes on New York as Donald Trump arrives at Trump Tower ahead of his court appearance tomorrow. But with his lead in the polls now stronger than ever, is the witch hunt against the Donald backfiring spectacularly? His former advisor, Seb Gorka, he joins me live straight after the break.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, the establishment stitch up seeking to bring down former US President Donald Trump ramped up into another gear today as the 45th President of the United States landed in New York City in the past hour ahead of tomorrow's eagerly anticipated court appearance. The Donald will be in front of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg to face trumped-up charges relating to hush money payments made before the 2016 presidential election. And both crowds and public anger are now growing in New York and beyond, with the White House today warning that they were, quote, ready for violence. The incessant attempts to sully Trump's name appear to be failing, though, with YouGov polling showing that his popularity against fellow Republican presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis has hit an all-time high since his legal indictment was announced last week. So I'm delighted to be joined now by Seb Gorka, former advisor to President Donald Trump during his time in the White House. Seb, welcome back to the show. So
it's been a while, Dan. Thanks for having me.
It has. Great to have you back. But with the Donald's popularity continuing to soar, are his detractors' attempts to bring him down actually now backfiring spectacularly?
Well, to quote Judy from Brooklyn, one of our loyal listeners who called in today, I just got off my live national radio show. She said the following, and I'm going to tweet her out with her permission as soon as I'm off your show. Tomorrow morning, President Trump's enemies will have gotten him re-elected. So, you've quoted the figures. Every poll we see, not only is President Trump more popular than Biden, Biden has sunk to 42%. That's the second lowest he's ever been since the inauguration. He is between 20, Dan, and 30 points in front of the next person, who is the governor of Florida, to get the nomination for the Republicans as their candidate for the presidency. So this is the kind of, cutting off your nose to spite your face. The Democrats are so irrational in their vituperative hatred of President Trump. They're probably getting him reelected tomorrow.
And Seb, look, tomorrow is a historic day. Donald Trump seems to be leaning into the process. What are you hearing about what we can actually expect? Is he going to make some sort of statement after being arrested? How's he going to deal with it all?
Well, I just had the 40th Commissioner of the New York Police Department on the show. He said, we are in totally unprecedented waters. The idea that this man will be put in handcuffs as he's being protected by the Secret Service is just insane, anathema. Even fingerprinting or photographing him for a mugshot, it's not as if people don't know what President Trump looks like. So utterly uncharted territory. When it comes to President Trump's plans, he will be back at Mar-a-Lago at his residence in Florida tomorrow evening, and at 8 o'clock local time, he will be making a statement to the nation.
Wow. What do you think he's going to say?
He's going to continue what he said right after the news of the indictment, the charge was leaked, that it's not about him. He's just a proxy for the 74 million Americans who voted for him. If you look at the last couple of years, Dan, it's insane. I'll give you one example. It's not just the January 6 people who are still in prison without having been arraigned for 2 years, some being held in solitary, which is just against the U.S. Constitution, where a man or a woman has a right to justice swiftly. But we have this absolutely notorious case, a pro-life pastor in Philadelphia who was protecting his 12-year-old son from an insane protester outside an abortion clinic who shoved him, was charged with a misdemeanor. The local court said, no, we quash this. This is garbage. You are protecting your son from a guy who was effing and blinding in his face. 4 months after that charge was dropped, 20 armed agents of the FBI stormed his home and in front of his 7 children arrested him. He won the case 3 weeks ago in a federal court. But President Trump has a very, very common, very powerful message. If you're a patriot, if you love America, if you're a conservative, they're coming after you. I'm just in the way. I'm not going to reveal anything else, but I expect that to be one of the main themes for his national statement tomorrow.
Do you think Republicans now believe, even if they used to be never Trumpers, that this is just an out-and-out witch hunt now?
Well, look, the facts of the matter are clear. In a court of law, there's something called a fact pattern. What is the fact pattern of the last 7 years, Dan? Whether it was a secret operation called Crossfire Hurricane that involved the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA to try and inveigle themselves into the Trump campaign to somehow prove Russia collusion that failed, whether it was an overt investigation by the former director of the FBI for 20 months at the cost of $40 million, which was the Mueller probe, likewise failed, whether it was impeachment 1, whether it was impeachment 2, whether it was the January 6th investigatory committee of Congress, or whether it was the raid of his home by armed agents of the FBI. What does that tell you? That's just 7 years of persecution.
Indeed. Now, just want to quickly talk about the Republican primary political aspect of this, Seb, finally, because as you say, that raid at Mar-a-Lago, that happened in Florida, you know, the state run by Ron DeSantis. Trump will be making his statement to the nation tomorrow in Florida, the state of Ron DeSantis. How angry is Ron DeSantis going to be about this arrest? Because do you think he's worried that this has maybe blown up his presidential ambitions?
Well, he didn't exactly shower himself with glory the Monday after this arraignment was leaked. He made a statement from the podium when he said, oh, I'm not interested in this. This is hush money for porn stars. No, it's not, Ron. It's an NDA. I signed an NDA with President Trump when I became his advisor. I'm no porn star. So as a former judge, advocate, general officer in the Navy, he didn't really look like a strong candidate. Since then, he's tried to mend the bridges. But the fact that he secretly or very quietly on Friday had the Florida Senate change the Constitution of Florida so that now he can run as president without leaving the governor's mansion. He's being a little bit sneaky and it doesn't look good. So Ron, start playing a real open, transparent political game and not one of these underhanded ones. But when it comes to his campaign, I think he's cooked. He's done.
Absolutely fascinating stuff from the former Deputy Assistant to President Donald Trump during his time at the White House, Sebastian Gorka. Sebastian, wow, we're in for 24 hours of history, aren't we? It's going to be absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. But coming up in Uncanceled, as cricket star Michael Vaughan is cleared of racism, was the BBC wrong to cancel him so soon and risk ruining his life? Former editor of The Sun, Galvin McKenzie, hits out shortly. But first, as Joe Biden reportedly declines his invitation to next month's coronation, does the snub put the UK's special relationship in jeopardy? My superstar panel return to thrash this one out. Plus, we're going to have more newspaper front pages hot off the press in just a few minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
So let's return to tomorrow's news site now in our media buzz, and more front pages have just been delivered. Straight to the Daily Express, which leads on the sentencing of the gangland killer of Olivia Pratt-Korbel, reporting that the gutless thug will likely die behind bars after being handed a minimum 42 years in jail. The Sun reports on TV star Philip Schofield breaking his silence over his brother's teen sex abuse, claiming that he no longer has a brother. Timothy Schofield was convicted of 11 charges related to sexually abusing a boy. The Daily Star reports that the Queen's devoted corgis are no longer mourning her death. The revelation was made by the Duchess of York, who is now looking after the pups. I'm sorry, how dare Fergie say that? Because I think they probably are missing the late Queen, right? Anyway, that shocked me. My superstar panel back with me now. Top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the AI newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the former MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. Now, Joe Biden will reject an invitation to the King's coronation next month, and yet another example of the US leader showing his total disdain for the British monarchy, and our country too. Sources close to the discussions told the Daily Telegraph that the First Lady Jill Biden, or, Kamala Harris, will be sent instead of the president, as US officials try to avoid the decision being seen as a snub. But the damage has already been done, in my opinion, with this latest display of contempt for the royal family by the Britain-hating president, following him siding with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle over their fake royal racism claims in that notorious interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2021. So after that awful attack on the royal family by the Duke and Duchess of Delusion, a spokesperson for Biden, Jen Psaki, had this to say.
Anyone to come forward and speak about their own struggles with mental health and tell their own personal story, that takes courage. That's certainly something the president believes in.
I mean, Belinda de Lucy, we saw there, didn't we? We saw there exactly where Biden's loyalties lie. He seems to absolutely love Harry and Meghan. He's pals with them. He loves the fact that they're trying to tear down the monarchy, because remember, this is a guy who has been taught growing up that England is bad. The United Kingdom is horrible. The English are ugly people. The royals are horrible invaders who destroyed Ireland. I'm absolutely disgusted by how much he hates Great Britain.
Oh, he's hated us for years, for decades, in fact. In the 1980s, he protected an IRA terrorist from extradition back to the UK to face trial. He has utterly meddled in Brexit and disrespected our sovereignty. And worst of all, his treatment of the British, an ally over the terrible Afghan withdrawal that he presided over. He has time and time and again shown disdain for our country, our people, our monarchy. His mum and his great aunt, he quotes publicly how much they disliked the royal family, and I think it was his mum who said, I'd never sleep in a bed if the Queen had ever slept in it. This is the environment.
And do you know, before Joe Biden first met the Queen, the late Queen, this is right back in the early 80s, his mum gave him one piece of advice: don't you dare bow to her. Exactly. Well, that says it all. But Carol Malone, I actually worry here about the impact that Harry and Meghan are having, because, you know, they are right in there with Joe and Jill Biden, and they have changed opinion, not amongst ordinary Americans, who I think actually can see through them, but among the left wing, the woke in America.
But they would anyway, so, I mean, I'm not terribly surprised at that. But, you know, people are talking... I mean, the White House are desperately scrabbling around trying to make it look like it's not a snub, when it clearly is. You know, he says he has other commitments. I mean, what other commitment could he have that's greater than the coronation of the British King? But you're right, he's an IRA sympathiser. You know, he's never happy than he's posing with Jerry Adams and whoever. You know, when he's asked about his nationality and his affiliations, he goes, I'm Irish. He's very clear about that. But I think right from the very start, you know, he hasn't given a tuppenny piece about the special relationship. He doesn't think there is one. He doesn't want one. You know, if we had a special relationship, we would now have a trade deal with America. It's inconceivable that we're supposed to be one of their greatest allies, and yet he's unwilling to do a trade deal with us. But I think that's good. And, you know, I think my reaction to him not coming is, who cares? I don't care. He seems to me like a president who's never present.
Look, he's a doddery bloke.
Yes, exactly.
He's dementia-ridden. I think he's one of the worst presidents there's ever been. But there was an opportunity here for him to make history, and I think Trump would have come, but I also actually think Obama would have come as well.
Would have come. But, you know, I think it's incredible that Hamza Yousaf, the new leader of the SNP, is coming, even though he's an avowed Republican who says he will destroy the monarchy.
I'd quite like him to stay in Hollywood, actually.
I would too. But even someone like him is coming. It's such a big
But Benjamin Butterworth, there really is something here, though, isn't there? When you look at that clip, you know, the day after Harry and Meghan have just tried to destroy the reputation of the late Queen and Prince Philip, who at that point was on his deathbed, right, by accusing them wrongly of racism. And rather than Biden saying to his spokesperson, don't wade into this, defend the Queen, defend the royal family, Psaki goes on international television and says, oh, Meghan and Harry are so brave. They weren't brave. They were telling lies, which Harry has since had to walk back. So I think that says where Biden's head's at when it comes to the royal family, doesn't it?
I think you've been on the laughing gas before it's criminalised.
That's illegal, and I don't do it.
It's not illegal yet. Look, the truth is that I think you massively overstate the influence that Harry and Meghan are having on this situation. You know, not long ago, you were making the argument, which I didn't disagree with, that their influence was over in America because, or not as much as it was said, because
Joe and Jill Biden loved those two.
Because the Obamas didn't invite them to, I think it was the 60th birthday party of Barack Obama.
Yeah.
So I think it's overstated. But look, you know, no US president has been to the coronation
When was the last coronation, Benjamin?
It was 70 years ago or 69 years ago.
1953.
Yep. And
what's changed in the past 50 years?
Would have been a nice
But look, I mean, sorry, the past 70 years. The past 70 years. What's changed? But let's be honest. Well, no, it didn't, because it wouldn't have been that hard to get across.
It's called modern transportation.
But look, you know, I think it's really odd to think that, you know, the US president should be coming to the coronation. We've never sent a prime minister to the inauguration of a US president, and that's not seen as a snub. And I think this idea that all these countries around the world that aren't part of the Commonwealth, that they should be turning up to the coronation of our head of state, is an odd, a mythical idea of the way it should work.
I think it's far more about protecting the USA from Biden. I think he's a total liability. He'd probably get off the plane and say, well, it's good to be here in Poland for King William's coronation, and completely embarrass them. He'd fall asleep halfway through the coronation. It would be caught on film. He'd be a disaster PR for America. They're probably keeping him away to save his reputation.
Final word, Carol.
He can't do 2 trips. He's doing a trip to Ireland
this month.
this, and he's not up to doing 2 because he's too well done.
Quickly, do you know, Barack Obama's ancestor and Joe Biden's ancestor both left Ireland in the exact same year. Obama is as Irish as Biden.
And they both took Winston Churchill out of the Oval Office.
Yeah, exactly, which is totally disgraceful. Now, look, throughout Nicola Sturgeon's tenure as Scotland's First Minister, the rumour mill was often in overdrive. But in a sensational interview with BBC Scotland's Glenn Campbell in a new podcast called Nicola Sturgeon, The Person, Sturgeon has confronted many of the stories about her alleged double life for the first time, including whether she's a secret lesbian. Watch.
People speculate about your marriage, your sexuality on social media.
I mean, apart from the fact that I read accounts of my life on social media and I think, you know, it is so much more glamorous sounding and so much more exciting. You know, I've got houses everywhere, if you believe social media. And, you know...
Which French diplomat are you having an affair with?
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to... I'll tell you off camera which one it is supposed to be. But whichever one it is, we've actually had a laugh about it.
Sturgeon's denial there relates to rumours that she secretly had an affair with a female French diplomat and even bought tennis legend Judy Murray's old house to use as a love nest to keep her husband from finding out. Now, according to Sturgeon, online tittle-tattle like that was part of the reason for her shock resignation last month. Nevertheless, by asking for anonymity and simultaneously releasing a tell-all podcast, Sturgeon appears to be channeling the Sussexes' worldwide privacy tour. Belinda DeLucy, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, do stand by, because coming up, as both Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman insist it isn't racist to speak honestly about grooming gangs in the UK and their ethnicity, are either nominated in the crowning moment of the show as we reveal tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. Find out shortly. But next in Uncanceled, as it transpires that the BBC handpicked the Boris-hating activist May Muller as the UK's Eurovision entry, why is the former England cricket captain Michael Vaughan still cancelled by the corporation despite being cleared of racism? Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie weighs in next. He's live in just 2 minutes' time, so don't go anywhere.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for Uncanceled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, Michael Vaughan was finally cleared of historic racism allegations last week, ending a gruelling 2-year battle to prove his innocence. The former England cricket captain was accused of making racist remarks and slurs to Azim Rafiq and 3 other Asian players before a Yorkshire match in 2009. But the Cricket Discipline Commission dismissed the allegation due to a lack of evidence. But while the likes of The Telegraph and Fox Australia stood by the Ashes winning captain, the BBC acted as they do, as judge, jury and executioner by dropping him from his show the moment the now disproven accusation was made public. Vaughan has spoken out against cancel culture over the weekend, telling the Daily Telegraph, "I can absolutely tell you that it's real and it comes through social media. It's so dangerous. You used to be innocent until proven guilty. You're now guilty until proven innocent. Your life gets completely put on hold. Whatever the accusation thrown at you, people on social media just will not allow you to carry on with your life while it's over your head." Now, predictably, the British Bashing Corporation has wasted no time in trying to bring Vaughan back into their fold, with sources close to the corporation revealing executives are meeting the commentator's advisors this week in a bid to bring him back. But Fleet Street legend Calvin Mackenzie is with me now. And Calvin, part of me actually wants Michael Vaughan to tell the BBC to go and stick their job offer, because they should never have suspended him in the first place.
No, well, a group employed by the BBC went to the BBC executives and said, we can't have him on air while this allegation is over. Honestly, it was like a court case in which Vaughan was correct. When he went into the court, everybody believed he was guilty, and especially the collection of Liberals who wanted him to be guilty. This is a great British hero. It was a shocking, shocking act. I don't agree with that attitude of saying, shove it, right?
You think he should go back?
I think he should go back, and he should just be Michael Vaughan again and try and rebuild his life.
And prove to everyone that the BBC was wrong by sacking him in the first place.
And actually, in a funny way, being in the public eye now is a total nightmare if you are centre-right. If you're centre-left, you can be Alistair Campbell, get involved in the most terrible allegations. Yeah, they were disproved in the end, or they would seem perhaps not to be right. But if you are centre-right, honestly, you are guilty of whatever is said about you, and you are going to pay a huge price. I want Michael Vaughan to go back behind the microphone, and I want him just to say, that was a great ball, or that was a tremendous shot. And honestly, the BBC are going to have to just suck it up. And so will those I would like to see named in social media those collection of BBC employees who said, we don't want to work with him, and nor should we. Why don't we see what their names are? Where do they live? Yeah. What is their standing in society? It's always the same in social media. You can hide behind some false name, but you, of course, whether you're Dan Wootton, me, or any of your panel there, they have to give their real names, so everybody piles in as Jack and Jill and God knows what else. It's a most unfair way of things being conducted, I must say.
But you're so right to make the point about it being one set of rules if you're on the centre-right political spectrum, because look at Azim Rafiq, the bloke who made all of these accusations. You know, he has been proven in text messages, completely undeniable, to be anti-Semitic. He's not cancelled. Now, by the way, I'm not calling on him to be cancelled, but I'm pointing this out because there is a total discrepancy in the way that Rafiq has been treated compared to the way that Vaughan has been treated, when actually there's only evidence about racism by Azim Rafiq.
Yes, and of course, Mr. Rafiq, of course, picks up 200,000 quid, right, for suffering some racist abuse. I'm not saying I'm not in favour of him receiving any racism either, but I was absolutely hostile to the manner in which the ECB conducted this in public. These allegations, right, should be heard in private and then an adjudication made. Honestly, these people's lives, whether it's Matthew Hoggard or the rest of them, have been devastated by this.
And it drags on and on and on and on.
Well, what about all those guys at Yorkshire Cricket who have all suddenly one day, Lord Patel, oh, he's gone already. Boom, he throws the lot of them out and then says to Yorkshire Cricket, oh, by the way, we didn't do this correctly. It wasn't legally correct. Oh, here's a load of cheques. So Yorkshire Cricket Club are in the hole for 2 million quid.
But these organisations need to learn, don't give in to the woke mob who is sending a few tweets, because that's what this comes down to. They absolutely panic.
Yes, but this happens even in the media.
Oh, always in the media. The media is terrible.
You know, in national newspapers, if you run some story now and a couple of tweets saying, oh, that's disgusting, you're racist, we hate you, we're never going to buy you again, suddenly the executives all start running around at 100 miles an hour. So there is no doubt being centre-right in this country is a disaster for somebody in public life. I feel desperate for Michael Vaughan. I hope he makes a huge success of the rest of his life.
Well, look, I agree with that, but I want to move on to this other scandal engulfing the BBC, because it actually sums up the point you're making perfectly, because our Eurovision entry, who's meant to bring the country together, she's actually a Boris-hating left-wing activist who actively campaigned for the former anti-Semitic Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. And in a series of shocking tweets, this is the 25-year-old May Muller, claimed that Boris Johnson did not deserve an ICU bed during his near-death COVID experience back in April 2020. She also branded the Conservative Party racist and elitist and said she hated Britain over the row over free school meals. Now, of course, she's performing in Liverpool next month, representing the UK that she claims to hate, with this song.
Instead I wrote a song about how you did me wrong. I could have cried at home and spent the night alone.
Now look, again, Calvin, I'm not saying Ms Muller should be cancelled. You know, she can actually think whatever she wants. But it does show you how the BBC thinks, because there's no way, if she had expressed centre-right views, that she ever would have been sick.
If she had said, I'm fantastic for Brexit, right, we should blow up those boats coming over
Nigel
the channel.
Farage for Prime Minister.
Any of that, but... And gone into Liverpool? Oh, my God, what on earth would happen to her?
The Sun's my favourite newspaper.
Yes, exactly. I can't help to buy... I'm rushing out to buy one right now. Very enjoyable. Right, honestly, she couldn't get into Liverpool. Do you know, it would be an absolute nightmare. Liverpool hasn't got any Tory... There are no Tory MPs, no Tory councils, no nothing for about 50 miles in any direction. It would have been impossible. So, look, I want the Eurovision contest to be very successal. I'd actually like her to win it.
Oh, yeah, me
if that
too.
was at all possible.
Me too. And it's a good little song. I know you weren't sure about it, but I'm a Eurovision fanatic.
I think she's gone a bit commercial lately. Anyway, but but however, it is literally impossible. There is a huge divide in our country. Yeah. And I'm not quite sure. My sense is that with social media, it's actually going to get worse. The great thing I'm looking forward to is if Starmer comes in, he will be the one. He will be the one we'll be throwing potatoes at, I'll enjoy that tremendously.
Calvin Mackenzie, so great to have you. We will speak later in the week, but it is time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. So, Carol Malone, who is your nominee for tonight's Greatest Britain?
Mine is Rishi Sunak for finally saying that for too long woke politics and cultural sensitivities have been putting women and girls in danger. He's saying now woke politics will no longer stop police from doing their job, and today he unveiled a whole stack of measures which will ensure that will happen.
Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Mine is an honorary Greatest Britain. It's Stormy Daniels, the hero of the day. Asked whether she would be afraid to look at Trump in court, she said, "I've seen him naked. There's no way he could be scarier with his clothes on."
Yeah, I have to say that was a very good line, wasn't it? Good line from Stormy. Belinda de Lucy, your nominee.
Mine has to be Suella Braverman for doing the same as Rishi did, but actually she came across so well, highlighting how multiculturalism, puts women and girls at risk. But also I have to nod my hat to Nigel Lawson, if I can, just to say he is one of the greatest Britons in politics, a true conservative, end of an era where great men like that die, and he has passed away today, so a big nod to Nigel Lawson.
No, very, very, very good. But I do just want to have a look at what Suella had to say earlier.
It's not racist to tell the truth about what has been going on here in Rochdale or in Rotherham or in Telford.
And I have to say, that line alone to us, that was an interview to GB News, that makes her my Greatest Britain today, because I think Superwoman Suella has been very, very brave in the way that she is prepared to tackle this issue of the grooming gangs and smash the PC culture that did so much damage. Union Jackass time now. Carol Malone, your nominee.
Mine is the aforementioned May Muller, the left-wing, Britain-hating, Boris-hating woman who's been chosen by the BBC, the biased BBC, to represent Eurovision. You know, she said she hates Britain and hates Boris, but, we're hosting it for Ukraine, and Ukrainians really love and respect Boris. So this is a kick in the teeth for them as well, who are representing us.
Benjamin Butterworth, out of interest, because I know you're a big Eurovision fan, do you understand the point that if this was someone on the right, they would never ever have been selected to be our Eurovision entry?
I think most people couldn't care less what the Eurovision entries politics tweets from 3 or 4 years ago are, and I think that it shouldn't stop them. And you said you don't think she should be cancelled. I think we should listen to the song, and it's a great song, by the way. I've heard it in a bar once or twice, and it's really pretty catchy.
No, I don't think she should be cancelled. Doesn't mean that I think her comments were appropriate or that she shouldn't be criticised.
I think the one about not getting the ICU bed is insensitive,
bad, yeah.
And it's not something I would have said.
Insensitive.
But do you know what I mean? Stop trying to see everything through a political lens.
Well, look, who's your Union Jackass?
This one is a political lens. It's Jeremy Corbyn, who has really undermined himself. He's been such a spectacular mess in the last week. He refuses to apologise for the anti-Semitism, the way he ruined the Labour Party. But I don't have any respect for him because he doesn't even have the guts to say that he'll run as an independent candidate, because he knows the moment he does, he won't even be a Labour member, and he's going to lose against whoever the Labour candidate will be.
By the way, May Muller is also a Corbynista, by the way, just by the by.
Is also what?
A Corbynista.
Oh, yes, of course she is. Of course she is. Belinda de Lucy, your nominee?
Oh, it has to be Keir Starmer for doubling down on destroying women's rights through his belief that women can have penises and that all single spaces basically will end up unisex. Absolute political suicide. So, yeah, he gets my jackass for today.
Look, I'm actually going to go with Carol Malone and May Muller, not because I want this woman to be cancelled. Let me be clear. Like Carol Mackenzie says, I want this woman to win Eurovision for us, but because I just thought her tweets were so university student. It's like she has no idea about politics, and she should just focus on becoming an entertainer and leave the student politics to the universities. But Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Belinda de Lucy, thank you so much for being my fabulous superstar panel tonight. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Of course, we will be covering what is a historic day in US politics. But next up, it's Headliners. Good night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us four, plus a special guest.
It's 5